And good evening, and once again, welcome to another edition of the Shadow Gallery. I am, as always, your host, James Donnelly, and it's Sunday night, and although I'm not feeling the best, because I've had kind of a rough couple of days here, I'm still here to bring you new comics, bitches! So, I hope you're seated, because we're just going to do away with the 20-ton elephant in the room right now. And that is, of course, the finale of Avengers versus X-Men. So, just to summarize, this has been kind of an abysmal failure of a book in many ways, and in really one way it has been actually kind of a triumph. Well, in two ways it's been a triumph. First of all, it's a triumph that shows, I think, that demonstrates very, very clearly that, well, three ways. The first and foremost is that it demonstrates very clearly that writing by committee is never a good idea. Because you have what should have been basically a decent three-act structure, and we get those three acts, but they're told in such disparate voices. Because of all the writers involved. Because you have, here's an issue by Fraction, here's an issue by Bendis, here's an issue by Brubaker, here's an issue by Aaron. You know, you have no kind of coherence to the language, to the rhythms. Each writer has their own very specific kind of rhythm, and none of them work to their strengths. That's the biggest problem with writing by committee, is because you can't figure out a coherent voice for the series. I mean, and that's where, at least, you know, even some stuff that I really didn't like Fear Itself, you know, or I'm just trying to think of other Marvel stuff. I mean, House of M, which this very directly links to. At least they were written by one person. You had one writer that was doing the whole thing. It was a much shorter time frame, or it was much fewer issues. But at least it was just one person who was writing the scripts, and one person that basically came up with the idea. I mean, of course, you know, all the Marvel architects, you know, come up with these ideas, but you know, and the more successful ones like Civil War and Siege, even though Siege is not really a huge event, it's counted as an event. And at least, you know, those are written by one guy as opposed to a bunch of different people. So so the failure of this to really reach kind of a critical mass of kind of excitement and something that was a really compelling read was very largely due to that, because everybody kind of just dialed into whatever the fuck was going on, and was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll just pick up from here and kind of write this the way that I would write it, but not so much, because, you know, we have to sell some books, so it can't be too, you know, I mean, that's where some of the tie-in titles have been enormously successful, in the sense that, you know, you had Jason Aaron doing a couple of issues, some really strong issues of Wolverine and the X-Men, where it was focusing on like one or two characters. You had Brian Bendis doing some incredibly good work on New Avengers, because he parsed down the story and just kind of ran with that. And Kieran Gillen doing some successful, some less than successful tie-in issues as well. So, what happened in this issue? Well, everything happened. Of course, you know, we had the last issue. Basically, Cyclops has become Dark Phoenix, but we don't start with that. We start with back on Kunlun, Scarlet Witch and Hope get into a fight. Now, this fight, apparently, the whole fight in its entirety takes place in AVX number 6, which is, you know, the Versus title. Which the only reason that I would even think about reading that book is because apparently there's a fight between Jarvis and Toad. So that, to me, you know, having the butler of the Avengers versus the janitor of the X-Men, I mean, that would be kind of fun. I would like to actually read that. But so you have Wanda and Hope squaring off against each other because, you know, everything is her fault, because, you know, everything has kind of fallen onto Hope's shoulders because Wanda said no more mutants when she was all and now she's okay again. So you have what happened to Quicksilver, by the way? Is he dead? Because I don't know. I honestly have no idea what happened to him. Because I don't remember him appearing in this series. Maybe because it's been so utterly forgettable from kind of moment to moment. But anyway, so then we kind of get some glimpses of that, and then we get into the big brouhaha where Cyclops is just smacking the shit out of all the Avengers. We have Andy Kubert on art. You know, like Iron Man looks like he's melting, or he's just really moist. I mean, the armor is just like like stuff is like dripping off of it. There's no, I don't know if like that's the Extremis armor doing something. I have no idea. And you know, you've got Thor being punched halfway around the world, and you know, Hulk that they made a big deal out of bringing into issue 11 is pretty much nowhere to be seen here. You have you know, kind of these revelations as the story goes forward, because it kind of flips back and forth in time. We have Tony kind of talking about his more kind of, not necessarily a spiritual awakening, but the greater acceptance of things that are not technological, that are not human. And it's like, I'll get to why I hated that in a bit. And then you have basically then Hope and Wanda team up, and basically they take down, there's some iron fisting going on apparently from Hope, because she's taken some of the training that she's received, as well as, so all of that, you know, all of that training that happened in these issues and in the tie-in stories kind of pays off. It's, you know, but you know, she takes some of Cyclops' energy and puts it into her kind of iron fisting technique. I just like using that term. And Wanda using all of her magical probability powers. And then we have Cyclops is finally down for the count, and of course the Phoenix energy escapes from his body, and it comes in. It comes into Hope, and Hope spends her time at first with the Phoenix, kind of undoing all of the damage that that Scott was doing as Dark Phoenix. You know, she's putting out fires and sealing out volcanoes, and you know, stemming tides that are turning into tsunamis and all that kind of shit. And it's just and then, you know, she comes back down to Earth, and she's like, you know, hear me, X-Men, I'm no longer the woman that you knew, blah, 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 blah. And then her and Wanda kind of grab hands, and instead of saying no more mutants, together they say, "No more Phoenix." And then the Phoenix energy just disappears. But what it does do, and this is really the only place where it's been truly successful, is in the sense that it has repopulated the entire mutant species. It's now no longer just 198. There are now millions of mutants again. So that is where this book did change the status quo, is that they have undone the events of 2005 or 2004, whenever the fuck House of M took place, and it's taken them this long to get there, but they finally have undone it. They have made mutants a population again. And Scott thinks of this as, now he's imprisoned, and he's very regretful about killing Professor Xavier, but he is totally not remorseful about doing about the Phoenix Force, because it did spark this new mutant population. So we have, we have literal hope, and we have figurative hope at the end of this. But it's all kind of wrapped up in this neat little ribbon. Magneto is, all of the Phoenix Five are wanted, including Magneto, apparently just because he's Magneto, and everybody thinks, since, even though Magneto was actually fighting against this, he's one of the bad guys because he's Magneto. And that was like, huh? Really? He's a bad... How did he get to be the bad guy? Because, I mean, it even, because there's wanted posters of him. There's wanted posters of, they already have Emma, but there's wanted posters of Illyana and of Peter and of Namor. But there's also a wanted poster of Magneto. And it's like, why the fuck would they... I mean, Magneto was someone who was fighting on... eventually came around to fighting on the Avengers' side, like all of the other X-Men did. And these, these posters, they're being put up by the powers that be, which essentially are represented by the Avengers. So why would they add Magneto to the list of people who are wanted? It doesn't, it just doesn't make any fucking sense. And it's like, what the fuck? And then, so we have, the Cyclops, like I said, he's, in a ruby quartz prison. He's got this ruby quartz whatever gizmo on his head that allows, that basically, you can't use his optic blasts. And basically there's this final moment of my two favorite Marvel characters, Captain America and Cyclops. No shit. And Captain America is acting like a total ass. And so is Cyclops. They're both just asses. I mean, there's no... they want to say, yes, there's a winner, because... because the X-Men, the Avengers and the X-Men defeated Dark Phoenix. But no, there isn't a winner. The Avengers actually aren't the winners here, because in actuality, the biggest change here was completed by Dark Phoenix, by Hope, and that could only happen, as Scott kind of says, that the Phoenix represents destruction and rebirth, and that's how he always knew it was going to play out, which is why this whole thing starting so stupidly in issue 1 with with the entire fucking Avengers team coming to Utopia and saying, "Give us the girl," and and basically Cyclops, optic blasting Cap, saying, "Fuck you," we're not going to let you take her. And this whole time, he was right. Is that but the thing about the Avengers is everybody is totally seeing this as a win for them. They don't see this as that they were on the right side of this the whole time, that there was never, a moment's doubt that everything, Scott is the absolute bad guy here. All the other Phoenix Five are the bad guys, including Peter, even though obviously he's the one that is easily the most remorseful about everything that he's done. But he hasn't done anything nearly as bad as Emma or Namor, or even Illyana. So I mean, he was just kind of guilty by association, really. So I mean, the whole idea of the Phoenix Five, was kind of just silliness to begin with. I mean, at the time, I thought it was okay. Well, that's kind of an interesting idea, but I mean, when you really come down to it, it's like, this is so stupid. I mean, there are so many easier ways that this could have been settled, and much more in character. Because the X-Men have defended the world from the Phoenix before, and the only reason that the Dark Phoenix became Dark Phoenix originally was because she was, Jean Grey was mind fucked by Mastermind and the Hellfire Club. And the only reason that the Phoenix Five kind of became gradually darker and darker and darker is because the Avengers wouldn't stop trying to beat the crap out of them. I mean, so essentially, anybody who reads this and comes away thinking that the Avengers won is a fucking retard. And I say that from the bottom of my heart. There's no way the Avengers, including the Avengers, can possibly see this as a win, but they actually do. And that's really where I get really angry about this, is because there's no way that this could not have gone in a different way. But and even, I'm not just talking from an actual character standpoint, I'm talking from a writing standpoint. But they wanted this event. Marvel wanted the big money. They wanted to go for the, they wanted to go for the big piñata and beat it until all these dollars just ended up falling out of it, because that's how you sell books. I mean, the only reason that I've been reading it is because it's been free to me. And, but the other reason is that it is of some, of course, historical interest to me, because this is, while it's not as bad as Flashpoint, because I don't know if too many things are as bad as Flashpoint, because ultimately they're both serving the same purpose, which is the rebranding. Which is that, starting, from scratch, this week we're getting Uncanny Avengers, where we have, a kind of lopsided team, in my opinion, because I know that, Wanda was an Avenger first before she was ever, she's never really been an X-Man, but she's a mutant. So there's, we have Cap, and we have Thor, and then we have Wanda, Wolverine, Rogue, and Havoc. And so that's, like I said, it should have been like, maybe, I don't know, have the Trinity or something like that. But basically, like I said, okay, so we're going into Marvel now. That's what this, like Flashpoint, even though it doesn't mean anything to the New 52, did end up launching the New 52. That's basically what Marvel's done here, because they saw the sales figures from the New 52 and they said, yeah, maybe we should do something like this, because maybe we can get people to buy our shit again, because DC is kicking our ass as far as units sold. So if they can get people to shell out the $3.99 instead of just the $2.99 that most of the New 52 titles are going for, then it's a win for Marvel. And that's all it really comes down to. Is that despite, the platitudes that this series is built on, all it is, it's about the cha-ching, and it's just a disaster. And this, the more I think about this issue again, the more angry I get about it. because I originally gave it about a 2.5, because, like I said, at least it did succeed in, like I said, the three things that were successful about it. No more writing by committee. I think it really proved that. It did boost the mutant population again, so that it did actually affect the status quo. The other thing is that it led into Marvel Now. Whether or not that will be a success, of course, remains to be seen. But like I said, at the crux of it all this was a very, it's a greedy cash grab moving into an even greedier cash grab as they start from the beginning. They number one everything again, and they start these new series, and but they have people, we have people like Hickman. Bendis is out of the Avengers, and you got Hickman taking over. You've got Fraction doing FF and Fantastic Four. You got Remender doing Cap. You've got, I don't remember who's I think it's Gillen that's doing Iron Man, if memory serves at all. But like I said, you have a serious rebranding of all, and of course, eventually we're going to have all of these different new Marvel Now comics. We've seen the teasers. Savage, which is apparently going to be a Wolverine title. You've got Superior, which is going to be a Spider-Man title, because it's going to have Slott and Stegman and Ramos and Kevin Coley. You have the new Thunderbolts, which is going to have Frank Castle, and Red Hulk, and a lot of red people, and I don't know. Apparently Nova is going to be an Avenger now, because he showed up for all of 5 seconds in the beginning, and then all of 5 seconds in this book. I mean, just this is it's a 1.5 out of 5. That's really the best that I can say for it, because it's just like I said, it's not as bad as Flashpoint, but it's more offensive than Flashpoint, because there's a much easier way they could have done this from, like I said, both a writing and a character standpoint, and they refused to do it because this was the way to get the big bucks in. Because you can't just have, you couldn't have the event, you couldn't have an event like the Phoenix coming into the fold without it being, a whole, it's got to encompass, all of the big names. So they fucked up, but, like I said, where this is going to go from here, I'm kind of excited about some of the Marvel Now titles. I'm kind of not. For some of the other ones, I'm very apprehensive. I'm much more apprehensive, I think, with this than I was with the New 52. But I have a lot of faith in people like Hickman, and Mark Waid doing his Indestructible Hulk and everything like that. So I mean, I'm looking forward to some titles. Some titles I'm very much not looking forward to. But of course, the big one for me is the one that's coming out this week, which is of course Uncanny Avengers, because John Cassaday, I loves me some John Cassaday. And just stop it right now, Matt. I know that you don't like John Cassaday. So anyway, moving on. I'm done with Avengers vs. X-Men. So Uncanny X-Men, number 19. This is basically the events of the finale of Avengers vs. X-Men. So I guess I'm not finished with it. From Scott's point of view, the passion of Scott Summers, as the issue is called, and it shows kind of Scott's life, important parts of his life throughout the years, just jumping out of the airplane, meeting, becoming an X-Man, meeting Jean Grey, or going to the Xavier Institute, meeting Jean Grey. Dealing with the Phoenix, fighting a man with claws a lot, and of course all this leading up to, again, him being the Phoenix Force leaving him, because he's experiencing all of these things simultaneously while he is Dark Phoenix. And Dale Eaglesham comes in to do some art, and it's not great, it's not bad, it's very kind of middle of the road. I've never been a huge fan of Eaglesham's art anyway. But what's really going on here is that the real point that we get to, of course, is the finale, the coda of this whole thing, which is where Cyclops is, again, totally remorseless about everything except for the death of Professor X. He accepts responsibility for that, but he also accepts total responsibility for rebirthing the mutant population, or at least kickstarting it again. And even though that was not really his doing. So I mean, even at the final page, he's kind of coming out of his little cell, where they've constructed the big visor that he can't take off of his head that, prevents him from using his optic blast. He comes in kind of hands high, like, yes, I did it. And it's such an out of character moment for Scott Summers. I mean, because you could say, okay, well, he kind of was acting the dick because the Phoenix Force was coming, and maybe that had an effect on his personality. Obviously, once he became part of the Phoenix Five, he did. Obviously, when he became Dark Phoenix, even more so. But now there's no residual traces of that in him, but he's still acting like a total asshole. So it's like, to not be remorseful about any of the other lives that he may have ended, any of the other things that he might have done. It's all for the greater good. And this is so not who Cyclops is. He is not an ends justifies the means kind of character. He never has been. I mean, even when he started X-Force, back when it was originally created, it was still on a very kind of, he knew he was kind of on a slippery slope, but that was when Cyclops was cool. When, they had they were doing Astonishing X-Men, and Joss Whedon was writing it, and that was the last, that was the coolest the Cyclops has arguably ever been, and since then he's gotten less and less and less cool. Because you've got to make way for the guy who has his own title, who's in every other team book that's out there, and that, of course, is the Snickety-Snicked Man. Because Wolverine is king shit now. I mean, this is really what it boils down to. This is what I think of the whole AVX thing, is that basically it's Schism, but on a larger scale. Because it's all about making sure that Wolverine is the go-to mutant in the Marvel Universe. And this issue just, again, Gillen just gets pretty much all of it wrong, but at least there are some moments where it's like, okay, that's kind of cool. There's small, tiny little moments. If you miss a frame, you'll miss the good parts. So this is about a 2 out of 5 for Uncanny 19. But okay, getting into some better stuff here, thankfully. Amazing Spider-Man 695, finally! And here's the great thing that they did here is they brought Christos Gage into the fold here to co-write with Slott. Because Christos Gage is an extremely talented writer, and don't think that he kind of gets the due that he ever kind of deserves. But, basically, Slott, like I said, he's kind of been running on fumes with Spidey for a while. I think he, because before, even before the whole Lizard thing, and then, of course, with the whatever the arc we just had was, with Alpha, yeah, that's who it was. he just seemed to kind of be running out of juice. And right before that, we had kind of the two-parter with where he was writing with Chris Yost, where he was doing Spidey and Human Torch, and that was really fun, and it was really cool, and it was really exciting. And now we're back to that because I think Slott needs someone to help him out, honestly, at this point in time. And Gage is just the kind of guy that's, you know, he's livened things up here. And of course, we have a much more interesting, right from the get-go, a much more Slott-like experience here. Because what we're dealing with here is that we have basically, you know, the kind of quote unquote, as Hobgoblin puts it, the Pulp Fiction briefcase that they're stealing from the Goblin Gang or whatever they call themselves. You know, because they're all these offshoots of you know, people that kind of worshipped Norman Osborn. And he's stealing this with members of the Hand because, of course, he's working for the Kingpin, and the Kingpin still controls Shadowland. You know, basically, you know, Spidey comes in, he intervenes, he grabs a suitcase, and Tiberius Stone, the traitor inside Horizon Labs, uses this device that was originally used in Spider Island to kickstart Spider-Man's Spider Sense. And it really, instead of kind of affecting it negatively, it puts it into higher gear, at least at first, so that he's able to very easily fight off all the ninjas and everything like that, and, you know, make good his escape. But what comes out of this is something much different. But that's, you know, tale for another moment here, because what we first have to deal with is, you know, Peter has basically kind of been, not outed, but he's basically going to be featured in an issue of the Daily Bugle. It's going to be a big front page headline, you know, the man behind Spider-Man, as basically, you know, that Peter is now kind of the human face, if you will, the normal Joe face of Spider-Man, because he's developed a lot of his tech that he's been working with. And of course, that's kind of a known fact, at least amongst the people at Horizon, and now the reporters, you know, now they're bringing it to Robbie Robertson, and he's going to publish the story. And he really doesn't want that to happen because, you know, some people might put two and two together. And of course, you know, we have Phil Urich and Nora Winters. Again, her character design completely different and almost creepily different than because she seemed much older in Punisher. But here she looks like she's kind of this pixie-ish, you know, young, hip chick. And it was like, huh? But, you know, we have, you know, Peter showing up, but we also have Madam Web, who is sending her daughter off to stay with her grandparents in Colorado because she is very firmly convinced that she is going to die. Because she has seen her future, or she's seen bits of the future, but now all of a sudden everything goes berserk. She starts to see everything in the future. And in this wonderful two-page spread by Kamikoli, you get to see, you know, this web and all these different pictures within the web. And basically we have a lot of little tidbits from Marvel Now popping up here and there, and we have images of Scarlet Spider, and we have images of X-23, and, you know, we have images of, you know, Wolverine, you know, and this big monument of you know, Charles Xavier, and, you know, so we have all these things kind of that are leading into Marvel Now. And then she kind of collapses, or she sends this, you know, this kind of astral plane projection to Spider-Man while he's in the Bugle office, and all of a sudden Peter's Spider Sense kicks into massive high gear. It is overloaded. He sees every possible danger, and this is a very Slott thing, where he starts to see literally every, even the most minute possibility of danger, and that they're all labeled individually. Here's a stapler. Here's hot coffee. Here's a guy that's about to, he knocks over Nora and Phil, because they were about to be nudged by the guy with, with the mail cart. So I mean, everything is this immense danger to him. And, of course, Madam Web kind of appearing out of nowhere to talk to Peter, or talk to Spider-Man and warn him, of the portents that are coming. We have a possible outing here, basically undoing the events of One More Day. And Doctor Strange, but then ultimately Doctor Strange's follow-up spell that has erased the identity of Peter Parker as Spider-Man to everyone that he came out to, which was the world, during Civil War. This got a whole lot more vital, a whole lot more exciting. The only kind of minus side to this book to me was the art. Even though Klaus Janson is no longer inking this, so Kamankole's art looks more like Kamankohle, I would still really have preferred to see someone like Ramos or Stefano Caselli doing this, because Kamankohle, I'm just not that convinced that he's that good of an artist. He does draw a book pretty well, but again, it's just not the kind of quality that I would like to see out of this book right now. But this was a 4 out of 5. This is definitely them getting back on the right track. And I really enjoyed this issue. It was a lot of fun. It allowed you to have fun with Spider-Man again, and not for things to feel kind of like, basically feel forced, like it did with the Lizard, with No Turning Back, that arc, and with the whole Alpha arc. So, thank God that that's over with for now. Here's kind of the other slightly lighter elephant that's in the room that came out this week, and that is Daredevil End of Days, #1. Now, apparently, several years in the making. I don't know when Brian Bendis and David Mack started kind of dreaming this up. Apparently, it was around the same time that Marvel started to do their The End books, which is basically the end of so many different characters' life. Now, this was back in, I think, 2007 or 2008. So this is Bendis and Mack, along with Klaus Janson as the artist, and along with Bill Sienkiewicz doing art, and it's basically what we open up with is the death of Matt Murdock, the death of Daredevil, in a final battle between Daredevil and Bullseye. And then it's right before he's about to be murdered by Bullseye, he says a single word. And then, Bullseye takes his billy club and just shoves it right through Matt Murdock's skull, and dead. Now, the interesting thing about this is that, of course, this is taking place within Hell's Kitchen, and everybody is filming it. They've all got their camera phones, they've all got everything, and they're actually just watching it happen. No citizen of Hell's Kitchen is willing to get out there and mix up in this, even though it is two relatively, normal-powered people nobody apparently just wants to risk themselves for the person that has risked himself for everybody else. And this is, of course, we're seeing all of this through the eyes and through the inner monologue of Ben Urich. As well. We should, because we haven't heard from good old Ben in a while as far as Daredevil is concerned, because he's actually, that's one of the things I've kind of been missing out of this particular, well, I mean, for a while now, because Ben Urich hasn't really been a very significant player in the Daredevil universe for, I think, quite some time, really. You know, here he's very much at the forefront, because basically, again, you have to understand this is the future, that, you know, other heroes have, you know, have died. The Daily Bugle is basically about to close. It's about to go out of business. And Ben Urich is kind of there. He does not want to write the story about this. He's just disgusted with, you know, this kind of end to Matt Murdock's life. And basically we start to travel through these final few years of Matt Murdock's life through the eyes of Ben Urich. And he, of course, is the best guy to possibly narrate this, because he is, after all, a writer. And he's someone who has very strong ideas and opinions about who Daredevil is to everybody. And we get, basically, this is, and Bendis has kind of called it this. He's kind of called it his Dark Knight Returns. In the sense that, well, this is the end of my hero's life. And that, unfortunately, is the problem. And really the only problem with this book, because this book is actually terrific. Klaus Janson really knows how to draw the shit out of a page. Now, there's only a few pages in which we are treated to Sienkiewicz's art, and they are beautiful. But there is a fight, basically the final confrontation between, another final confrontation between Daredevil and Matt Murdock, and this takes place apparently a couple of years before this death moment, and where Matt Murdock kills the Kingpin. So the, you know, and there's, you know, this, and it's an incredibly dynamic and powerful sequence as drawn by Janson. It's really gritty, it's really bloody, it's really dirty, it's really ugly, but it's, at the same time, it's really quite beautiful at the same time, because of just how gritty and dirty and grimy and ugly it is. Because they have really, you know, Klaus Janson, I mean, he's not a happy storyteller guy, which is why I've always said to myself, why the fuck is Klaus Janson inking Spider-Man? Because he's making it, his lines are too extreme and his angles are too severe, and, you know, but here is where he's at home. This is a good character for him to work with under the, you know, the authorship of people like Mack and Bendis. You know, because this is the more kind of Millerish 70s Daredevil, and it's a very similar style, and that's, again, kind of the biggest problem with this book, is that it is so similar to a tale like The Dark Knight. You have this big 2-page spread, which is just, you know, it's just talking heads, and it feels very kind of, it feels like it's literally kind of torn from, like, the news segments that we saw in Dark Knight Returns. And a lot of this feels, you know, okay, well, he's, you know, kind of, you know, like Batman versus the Joker. You have Punisher, or you have Daredevil versus the Kingpin, where he finally kills the Kingpin. Because, as he says, after he's killed him, he basically says, I've tried everything else. And we don't know what brought Matt to this state. And we're dealing, and of course we're dealing with Ben trying to write the story. So that's, like I said, it's really interesting conceptually. It's a lovely book in its dirtiness and its grittiness and its ugliness. It is very, very well written, but again, it's a little too derivative for my tastes. I'm sure I'll continue to pick it up. I'm very anxious to see where this goes, because there is a really big question mark that is left at the end of this issue. I have my own suspicions upon where that's going. I'm not going to spoil it, but it's really interesting. And I will keep picking up. This is a 4 out of 5. I mean, if it had not felt quite so much like Dark Knight Returns, I would have absolutely given this a 5 out of 5. But it's just not, like I said, a little too derivative. So, so moving on to the independents here, Thief of Thieves, number 9. So basically we have here, I'm not going to go into too much detail about this, because with the departure of Nick Spencer and the arrival of James Asmus, you can definitely see that there is a narrative shift here. Whereas now I'm still definitely willing to give this book a chance, and this is not a bad issue by any stretch of the imagination, because basically we have, Augustus is trying, we see kind of Augustus, in his youth, and it's kind of clever. We see him, with the ski mask, and he wants to learn how to be a thief, because he thinks it'll be cool. And of course, Redmond, or Conrad Paulson, he's having none of that. He does not want Augustus to go down the same road, but of course he has, and he's fucked up in pretty much every possible way that he can. He is, he's basically traded his whole persona in as being the son of Redmond. And we have Redmond himself dealing with, with the Fed, and I can never remember her name. I keep forgetting to write it down. But with, the kind of, Lopez-ish, Jennifer Lopez out-of-sight-ish Fed, is now very much, she does not want Redmond to kind of do his victory lap for everything that he accomplished with getting his son out of prison. Because of course she knows it's him, and but everything now is starting to go south. Because I think that this series could have easily ended with the departure of Nick Spencer. I think the area that it left off with was just fine for an ending. But they got to continue, and I can appreciate that. They have more of a story to tell. But where this book started, it was, to me, it felt... I was not a huge fan of the first issue of this series, as you may remember. I thought it was a little bit too... kind of mired in the tropes. It felt a little bit too slow, but what eventually blossomed out of that, and why I think it became a really brilliant comic, was that I found that Nick Spencer and Robert Kirkman were having fun with the tropes. They were re-examining them. They were fucking with them. They were turning them on their ears a little bit. And that was where the fun and the originality eventually came out of this. But now it is going literally back to the place where I was afraid that it was going to go, because basically the finale of this issue, I'm going to kind of spoil it here. So if you haven't read it yet, I'll do my customary hand up so you can mute it. So here it comes, hands going up. Basically, at the end of this issue, Augustus is brought before all of his the people that he owes money to, and they basically say, if you don't get your father to come work for us, we're going to send your girlfriend back to you in pieces, a finger at a time. We're going to start with the fingers. So, end spoiler. Okay, so no more spoilers. Okay, so that to me was exactly the place that I thought it might go at the very beginning of the book with Redmond, with the character of Redmond. But now that it's happening with Augustus, now it's like, ooh, not so good. I'm not liking the direction that this book is going now. But again, it has the great Sean Martinborough art. Like I said, I mean, there are some really nice character moments in this, particularly in the scene between Redmond and his ex-wife, where he kind of comes to warn her, and to try and keep Augustus safe, and try to keep him out of the try to keep him away from everything that he is already doing in the book's narrative. So this was a 3.5 out of 5, really, at best, because I have to give the book a chance, because it's done this before. It's kind of started with the tropes and then birthed its way out of them. So that's where I'm going with this. But Asmus, like I said, he just doesn't have this. I don't think that he's nearly the same caliber of a writer as Nick Spencer is, and just doesn't have the knack for this, I don't think. But he may prove me wrong. So that brings me to Black Kiss 2, number 3. I'm enjoying this book, mostly because it's just so fucked up. And it is literally Howard Chaykin at his most twisted, at his most delightfully twisted, I might add. Because basically we have Beverly and Dagmar we have them in Paris during World War II, fucking and killing Nazis and French Nazi collaborators. Or collaborators. Well, I don't know why I said collaborators. I was thinking of the word saboteur, but anyway. But Dagmar, after one of these kind of killings, Dagmar is caught, and she is beheaded by the Nazis. And then we skip to 1957 to Mosbyland in California. Gee, I wonder what that's supposed to be. And of course, everything that happens after the lights are turned out in Mosbyland are totally fucked up and totally twisted. There's all these horrors all over the place. And basically we have, kind of this four-way with Dagmar, who does not realize that she's Dagmar. She thinks her name is Kim. And, of course, the guys that are having this, they're kind of trying to pull this train with her, sees that she has a dick, and of course they decide to fuck him anyway. And kind of Beverly comes in and saves the day. It's just, it's just, like I said, it just doesn't get much more fucked up than this. And fucked up, twisted, crazed, just over the top with its sex and violence. And that in and of itself is kind of a glorious thing, and it's fun. It's a fun read, especially, like I said, for fans of the comic. And even those who aren't fans, I think, could kind of get into, those who are into the more twisted, fucked up shit can kind of get into this. So this was about a 3.5 out of 5 for me. I'm enjoying this series more and more as it goes along. But the big thing, the other big thing of this week, which I think was under a lot of, kind of went under a lot of people's radars, was The Boys number 71. So this is the finale. This is the final issue of The Boys. Although, for some reason, that strikes me as not being true, because it's the conclusion of Blow the Bloody Doors Off. But it was my understanding that Derek Robertson was going to be doing the art on the final issue of The Boys, but no, it's Russ Braun again. And what we have here is a tragic finale to a non-tragic book, for the most part. See, through the years, The Boys had, it started as this very irreverent, very anarchic, anti-superhero sensibility, and basically that all the superheroes are just insane or, just totally amoral, and, they're all under corporate control of American, and I got, it's like I was really on board with that. I liked that idea because I mean, Garth Ennis for years, he's been calling superheroes twats and tights. He hates them, and we got 71 issues of just unabashed superhero hate. But what it eventually evolved into was a story of that didn't just parody every single superhero trope, but it also became a love story. It became a love story between, and it was a sort of coming of age, if you will, story of Wee Huey and Annie. And that's what we were kind of treated to more often than not, is that we had this once it kind of came to a certain point, we were treated to a love story. And then when it broke off into Butcher, Baker, Candlestick Maker, we saw that was a very touching and tragic love story as well. So I can see the evolution of this book throughout its issues, and it's a very, it has been a very strong book, but it does have a very kind of 3-act structure, but the 3rd act came very late to the book. And of course, we're talking about the final confrontation between Billy and the Homelander, and of course now this finale, which is where basically Billy, his whole plan is to kill everybody with Compound V in their bloodstream. And he's about to do it, but in the final moments of the penultimate issue, Huey, is going to stop Billy from doing this. And then this is basically, it moved me, but it also kind of upset me because this issue was very reminiscent of these 2 issues are very reminiscent of the finale of Preacher. Is that I got a very similar vibe off of this. Is that you have you have the main character, the character that we've been following, our voice, if you will. We have Huey against the kind of bastard of the piece, which in Preacher was Cassidy. And here, like I said, it's Billy Butcher here. And he, we have them both, Huey is pretty seriously wounded. Billy is, his neck's broken. He can't move below the waist, so he can't reach his detonator that he was going to use to kill everybody with Compound V in the world, which is a lot of people. And, we get to, that's kind of why he killed all of the other members of the boys, because he didn't want them to die along with everybody else. So there's a lot of, kind of strange and odd excuses, and there's a lot of, kind of walking down memory lane between the both of them. And then we get to the kind of this ending, which I saw coming. I felt, okay, well, this is what's going to happen. I know what's coming here. And I also saw in the way that in which Billy was going to make Huey do it. It was going to be something that, the only thing, because, Billy missed his little brother and he wanted another one, but someone that was more on his, level. He kind of adopted Huey. I mean, that was what he did. He brought him into the fold. And, it turned out to be, both probably the best and the worst thing for Huey. And there's a lot of very emotional moments in here. There's a lot of understandings that they come to, even as they kind of verbally spar, as opposed to the physical confrontation between Jesse and Cassidy at the end of Preacher. This again is not the kind of book that it always set to out preacher. That's what they all, that was kind of Ennis and Robertson's mission statement from the very beginning. That was going to be more sex, more violence. But at the end, the books do feel very, very similar. And Preacher is, to me, it's the best comic book ever written as far as a long-form comic. And this is nowhere near the League, but it did get close quite a few times. And this is one of those issues where if Ennis hadn't done something so similar to this before, again, like End of Days, this would be a much higher rated comic. But at the end, it comes down to this is a 4 out of 5 for the finale of The Boys. So, good night, boys. We'll see you. So it brings us to DC, and we have Earth 2, number 5. Basically, what we have here is that we've been introduced to the Atom in the previous issue, and he's kind of an agent of the government. We have this Commander Khan of kind of this World Security Council. They're trying to figure out what the hell is going on. They have basically Grundy, who is of the Gray. He just brings death wherever he goes. He controls death. And we have, these... Basically, this is, to me, an extremely run-of-the-mill... it has now become... Essentially, this is Justice Society... Justice League. They are interchangeable now. This issue kind of solidified that for me. Is that they were not content to kind of go on their own way of forming their own superhero team. What it feels like here is going on is just they're ending up copying everything that Johns and Lee did, except here it's, James Robinson, Nicola Scott. So the art is fantastic. The writing, of course, leaves a great deal to be desired. Terry Sloan kind of shows up here. So, I mean, just from the 0 issue of this and to this issue, I feel like this is no longer a book that I feel I'm really interested in. So this is pretty much ending up on my drop list. I just don't really have any interest in it anymore, because if it was interesting at first. I was really anxious to see the heroes kind of getting their powers, but now we're introducing heroes already with powers into the whole thing, and we do have some moments that work. So this at best was maybe a 2.5 out of 5, maybe leaning more towards 2. So it was not good. It was slightly below average. It wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't horrible, but it was not good. And this brings us to our books of the week. There are 3 books which are vying for the top slot here. And those of you who have seen Ghost Critic's work are probably going to come to some of the same conclusion that you will about me on what I'm going to talk about here, because there's obviously 3 books that I haven't talked about yet, and if you know me, you know that I read them, you know that I love them. But it's really only 2 books, again, kind of following along the same lines of logic as Mark himself did. So first off is Fatale number 8. This was a real joy to read because we had not just a split narrative, but we had a triple narrative in this book, because we begin with another kind of insert into the story as it goes along, because we have in the present we see Nicholas Slash kind of running and hiding from our strange bowler hat glasses guys, these strange agents of the unknown, and we see him recounting why that he realizes that he's met Josephine before when he was a child, and when his father and his uncle went to visit her, and they were and he was just a kid, he didn't understand it, but ever since then she's kind of stayed with him. This image of her has kind of haunted him, even if he doesn't realize it. Now he's finally kind of putting the pieces together in this, that yes, he actually did meet Josephine before, which is why he's become so obsessed with her. And there's kind of a drunken hookup that he has in this, that of course leads to something very unexpected. Did not see this one coming. But even as he's with this woman in flagrante delicto, he is obviously thinking of Josephine, and he just cannot get her out of his mind. And that's and part of that stretches back to this time where he first met her when he was just a boy, and the realization of that. And then we get to the past, where we have Josephine, we have her story, and Miles' story, and Susie's story. We have all three of these people. Josephine, she is getting to a point where she's tired of running. She's tired of just everything that she is been cooping herself up with, because she has kind of found this new kind of joy with Miles. And and we see again how with Miles, being around her is affecting him, and it seems to be again for the better. She's making somehow she's making him a better man, someone who cares, someone who is into the whole who is who wants to become just a better person, someone who will step in and kind of try to save the day, and naturally, of course, they're having a sexual relationship now, and he desperately wants to, he's afraid of water. He won't even allow himself to go near the water even while she's kind of running through it, because he does not want to appear weak in front of her. He does not want to appear afraid. He wants to be better. And this is all kind of leading to Susie and finding out more about what exactly she was involved with, and this film that they've gotten their hands on. And in the midst of this, we have these two older men and this little boy that come in to Joe's house, and they're explaining, that they're not safe anymore, and how she is potentially not safe. And of course, leading back to the prologue of this book. And then we have our third narrative, which is that of Hansel, or as he is actually, of course, he is Mr. Bishop from the first arc of the series. And he is now blind, because that's what our very, very, very anti-heroish ex-cop, or cop, dirty cop, did to Mr. Bishop, is that he blinded him. And we get how he is trying to regain the power, and we see him being this very Manson-esque figure. He is someone who is almost kind of, whether he is inspired by Manson or whether Manson was an inspiration of his, it's hard to really tell. Of course, the Manson family murders took place a couple of years before when this book is set, during, at least during the past time. And we have just how evil he really is, and how incredibly fucking bitter he is. He is just pissed off at the whole fucking world because he's blind. Because this whole thing has just kind of become an insult to him, and it's something that he can't get around. He just can't get it out of his head that he has somehow been lessened by a mere mortal, And of course, we have Susie kind of discovering some information about Josephine that she was probably not meant to know, and this leads into her getting in some pretty serious trouble, apparently, and that's where we leave off. Now, everything works in this issue. This is an absolutely terrific issue of this book. The pacing is just right. It's very even. This book has always cooked at a slow burn. So for those of you who are expecting something, oh my god, the big battle, that's not going to come anytime soon. We're not going to get a lot of answers as things go along until they feel that they're ready, that Brubaker and Phillips feel that they're ready to start giving us those answers. And we as an audience, we want them, and sometimes we'll complain about it going too slow. Just like we'll complain about The Walking Dead, the TV show, how one time, well, there's not enough zombies. Excuse me. And then the next, and then in, 2 episodes later, it'll be, oh, there's too much zombies. That's the kind of, this is going to be a polarizing book to a lot of people, which is sad, but it's true. But I, for one, am fully on board with Fatale. This was an absolute 5 out of 5. Brubaker crushing the writing. Phillips doing some absolutely gorgeous and terrifying work at the same time. Just really magical stuff. Now, of course, the book of the week, again, is really 2 books. Because you can't separate the 2, really. But there is one that I think has the edge on the other one. But what we're talking about here, of course, is Animal Man 13 and Swamp Thing number 13. Because what we have here are basically 2 very parallel stories that are running off, just kind of going down this parallel road in which they will eventually intersect. But for right now, one is going down the red path and one is going down the green path, but they're both combating the rot. And what we have here is, we have in Animal Man land, in the red, we've got, Buddy, discovering it has been a year that he's been gone. He discovers this as he is kind of saved from another agent of the rot, which is Hawkman, who has been rotified by Steel, by Black Orchid, and by Beast Boy. And they kind of go over the information that, yes, Buddy Baker has been gone for a year, and since then, basically, we've had this apocalypse of the rot, that the rot has come, it has won, and and they take him back to the Red Kingdom, which is basically where he finds out that the Abbots, can't even remember what the hell they're called now, but kind of the powers that be of the Red have sacrificed themselves to create basically the only the last true bastion of red on the planet, and that's where kind of all of these heroes are kind of cooked up. But we also have, in the present, we have some really serious shit going down with the Baker family. That, you know, basically Cliff has wandered off on his own under the influence of the rot. Maxine, Ellen tries to push Maxine to use her abilities so that she can find where Cliff is gone, and it's somewhere very, 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 very dangerous, and very terrifying. But what we eventually get when we get to when we go back to the future. See what I did there? And we get Buddy and the remaining heroes, and one of these remaining heroes is John Constantine, showing up in this book, oddly enough, but understandably enough, because of course Lemire is writing Justice League Dark. But that basically he is on Buddy Baker's ass because, basically you fucked up, son. You left your daughter out there totally unprotected while you just disappeared and went off wherever. And of course, Buddy has no idea that this is, that all of Rot World was going to happen. There was no conception of this that either he or Alec Holland had when they left. That somehow they were going to drop, and it was going to be, that a year was going to go by in like 10 minutes. Or not even. I mean, as soon as they went into the rot, boom, time started moving. And so they are in some very dire straits, both in the future and in the present, and it's very frightening. Steve Pugh does a really commendable job. Again, his style is really growing forth in this book. It's really hitting its stride. Of course, Lemire is writing the living shit out of this. He's doing just some excellent, amazing, edge of your seat work. And that brings us to the book that I do think has the edge. Not personally, but just because I think this book works better, and that is Swamp Thing number 13. Because here we have Alec Holland. There are two things that I think this book that gives it the edge. First of all, we have the return, the long-awaited return, not terribly long, but the very hopeful return of Yannick Paquette doing art on this. Now, of course, they've had Marco Rudy doing a terrific job. They had a guest issue with Francesco Francavilla, always a wonderful thing. But to see Yannick Paquette come back to this title, it is magic. That's number one. Number two is that instead of having a group of heroes that are working with him, or that kind of pull Alex kind of fat out of the fire, he has immediately from the first page a very adversarial relationship, because the two people that he runs into, well, one's not really a person, but we have Dead Man, who of course he's had experience with in the past, and we have Poison Ivy. So of course these are, she is one of the, she considers herself a protector of the green, even though obviously she's not an avatar of it, because she is in fact an eco-terrorist. So there, for right off the bat, you have this very, very strained relation with both with Alec and with Pamela Iceland, because again, she is firmly of the belief that Swamp Thing, he abandoned the Green, he abandoned the Parliament, and the Parliament has now there's so much to talk about this issue, but it's just like I can't give too much away out of it. But there, to pick a villain that has, because we have, again, you know, these apocalyptic versions of heroes that they have to fight, that they have to defeat, but in the present we have Abby Arcane, who is flying back to her homeland, to the first place that she came into contact with the rot, so that she can somehow develop more of a bond with the rot, so that she can work from without to try and stop it from rising any further. Because she, of course, you know, she has, being an arcane, she has the biggest ties to the rot. And again, so both books have where we have this this future that they're in, where everything horrible has happened, and they don't rightly know how to deal with it. But again, we have this present where the stakes, the emotional stakes, are so incredibly high, and they're so incredibly terrifying, and they are potentially totally and absolutely heartbreaking. Now, I don't know where this book is going. I don't know how far they plan on extending Rot World, if it will extend out of the... I think this is potentially the first real kind of event, if you will, of the New 52, is the only thing that I can kind of see this as. Now, I don't read previews. I don't tend to get a lot of that stuff, so I honestly don't know where this is going from here. I don't really want to know. If it ends up growing organically into the rest of the DCU, into the New 52, then I'm totally fine with that. If it ends up not, if it ends up being confined to these two comics, and reaches maybe into the, you know, into like Justice League Dark or whatever, then again, I'm fine with that too. But we have here, you know, this is the Rot World that they're in now. So how can we reconcile this future that is coming a year from now with what's currently going on in the DCU? Will this series continue into the next 12 months? Will Rot World continue into the next 12 months? And then somehow some of these peripheral titles will find a way to stop Rot World from becoming a reality. So this is what, you know, if this were to become an event, having people like Snyder and Lemire at the fore of it is absolutely the best choice that DC could make. But, you know, Snyder has obviously got his hands full. We've got this week, we've got coming up the death of the family, of course, where the return of the Joker to the full of the Bat universe, the Bat family titles. And of course, incredibly looking forward to that, to see, you know, specifically Snyder and Capullo's take on this, but also, of course, to see how the other peripheral titles deal with it as well. But I mean, these two books, both of them 5 out of 5, great. Like I said, just riveting, exciting, vital, and powerful reading for Animal Man and Swamp Thing. But like I said, Edge does go to Swamp Thing as far as just being like the absolute book of the week. So that's it for this week's New Comics, bitches! So, hope you enjoyed it. Of course, your first time here, please subscribe. Go back and view some of the older videos. You know, set aside some time. All of them are this long. Some of them are a little shorter. Some of them are a little longer. But this one was long because, of course, I had to do kind of my summation of why everything about Avengers versus X-Men didn't work. Almost everything about it didn't work. So, like I said, please subscribe. Please don't forget to comment. I always love reading your comments. I always love responding to them. I always love hearing what you have to say. Maybe, you know, again, ideas about what you think should go on. I do not, and as far as ideas that I kind of introduced myself, or someone maybe might have suggested it, but that I kind of brought to the forefront in people's minds who are watching this. I don't think I'm going to get the wife in on this, at least not for a while yet. And it's not a matter of camera shyness. It's just that she is really, it's really hard for me to decide what a good first issue of something that she should read, because I want it to be timely. I do want it to have something to do with what what all of you are reading out there. So I want it to be something important, and that might, who knows, that might start this week with Batman, because she's a Bat fan. So we'll see, but I don't think it's going to happen. So don't hold your breath. But anyway, thanks for watching as always, and so again, that's it. We're signing off now. So again, thank you. This is James Donnelly from the Shadow Gallery. Follow me on Facebook, James Donnelly at Facebook. Follow me on Twitter. I'm at Donnelly92274. And follow me on Tumblr at theshadowgallerycomics.tumblr.com. And enjoy. So again, thank you for watching. This is me, James Donnelly from the Shadow Gallery, signing off and reminding you, as always, to stay in the shadows. Let's do that one more time.